Hello there, I'm Kios Throne and Beatmaker, and welcome to Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. Before we get into it, if you are new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell. And on this episode, we're going to discuss the Relic of Bir Hooker, Part 1. Let's get into it. This article was updated December 3rd, 2023 by Anne Mike. The Relic of Bir Hooker, Proof of a Race of Giants, Part 1. Now, if you've been to my channel, you know I love me some giant talk. Gotta get my Nephilim fix in. Let's get into it. In April 1988, the Swiss club owner, Gregor Spory, traveled to Egypt armed with a number of books recommended by a friend to learn about the ancient Egyptian culture. It was a journey that would change his life forever. During this trip to Egypt, Spory was often found in the Great Pyramid, where he wanted to find out whether there was any biocosmic energy inside it. To achieve his goal, he crawled through shafts, bribed overseers, and spent endless hours in various sarcophagi, waiting for evidence of a power supply. In vain, Spory believed that if you put a bottle filled with water on top of the Great Pyramid, it would explode because of the cosmic energy. Could you imagine smoking a couple of chivas with this cat? Oh man, you'd have a wild conversation. He performed the experiment, but sadly nothing happened. Well, you gotta love his commitment. Can't fault him for that. Here we have an image of Greg Spory, a Swiss club owner, in one of the many tunnels of the pyramid, I would speculate. You know his club got to be fire, though. He's probably got a wild club. Spory's journey was almost over when the bartender of the hotel where he was staying told him that he knew of an interesting excursion for him. The bartender had been watching him and noticed he was interested in extraordinary cases. Spory was curious and decided to make the excursion. On the second last day of his holiday, early in the morning, a taxi picked him up to take him to his destination. The bartender showed the driver a crumpled note with the address, and the journey began. Naguib's Secret Legacy, the unearthed relic of Bir Hooker. The journey was a 2-hour ride to the district Bir Hooker, a place near Sadat City, located about 100 kilometers northwest of Cairo. They stopped at a farm where Spory met an elderly farmer named Naguib. Naguib is a descendant of an ancient family of grave robbers. From a legacy of his ancestors, Naguib inherited two wooden boxes full of valuables that provided him a good income over the years. The stolen treasures were sold to Western tourists and proceeds brought Nagib land. However, there is one item he never sold, which had been in the possession of his family for 150 years. Only a few people have ever seen the object. Nagib was a financially Nagib was in a financially difficulty, so he proposed to Spori that he could see this particular object, photograph it, and hold it for a fee of $300. Spori sat on a wooden bench as Nagib pulled out a wooden box and lifted the lid. As a musty smell rose in the air, he took out an elongated packet wrapped in a leather cloth with lace around it. Underneath the lace cloth, old rags were wrapped around a strange-looking object. When Nagib unwrapped the package, a gray-brown oblong object emerged. He laid the object carefully in the hands of Spori, who examined the object with curiosity. He suddenly realized he was holding a gigantic, mummified finger. Here we have a Polaroid photo of the finger and an x-ray made in the 1960s. It was not an ordinary finger, as it measured at least at least 35 centimeters, 1377 inches long, and was about 6 centimeters, 2.36 inches thick. Spori examined the finger in detail and was able to determine that what he was holding was old, organic, and humanoid. The finger looked like it had been cut off with an anatomical precision, and in some places was crumbled. The leathery skin was rippled in places, and the skin was a few millimeters thick. Between the dried skin folds, he could see remains of fungus, and the nail was loose. The surface of the skin was damaged in some places, as if mice had gnawed on it. The bone felt woody. And here we have more images of the giant's finger. Let's continue. Spory was dumbfounded, as the abnormal size of the finger would have meant that its owner must have reached at least 5 or 6 meters. That's 16.40 or 19.68 feet in height. I'll repeat that. Spory was dumbfounded, as the abnormal size of the finger would have meant that its owner must have reached at least 5 or 6 meters, 16.40 or 19.68 feet in height. His skepticism led Nagib to show him another item contained within the wooden box, a leather file holder containing a number of documents. Inside the folder was a certificate of authenticity, some papers with Arabic and Latin letters, a Polaroid photo of the finger, and an x-ray made in the 1960s. The farmer's son had some research done through a friend in the hospital of Cairo, where Spory compared the finger to an to the x-ray, he could see the proportions are shaped were correct and that the x-ray was of the finger he was holding. And that concludes part 1. Now, if you go to my if you go to my video section, well, if you go into Lounge Ronin, you'll find it. But I did a two-parter on whether or not giants built the pyramids of Egypt. In part 3 of the Relic of Bir Hooker, uh, we'll get some startling images that may surprise a lot of people. But this whole thing about giants, if you've been on my channel, like I said, I've done a number of streams and shows covering giants. Whether it's the giants of North America, the giants of South America, or the giants of Egypt. The Smithsonian, they know that giants existed. They have confirmation of it. Excuse me. There was a man. Well, I just need to get something to drink. I'm thirsty. But anyways, there was a man who worked for the Smithsonian whose entire job was to suppress any information about giants, confiscate any artifacts, bones, whatever. I have several series on them. Whether it's it's actually the Giants of West Virginia, where we cover that a bit more extensively about this individual who was the head of this department in the Smithsonian. But the point that I am making is that and we're going to be covering. I'm going to be delving into some folklore a little bit as well. So we're going to be delving into some of the folklore a little bit and the origins of folklore. But the point that I'm trying to make is when it comes to giants, or any fantastical creatures you may have read in your fantasy books and what have you, there's always a bit of truth in legends. I love this saying. It's from Star Wars. I love it. Because we used to hear the stories of giants and think they were just fantasy, but then next thing you know, they're uncovering archaeological city remains of giants in North America by the Hopewell people. But I digress. The point that I'm making is that so many of these fantastical creatures that we have read about, why is it that now we are starting to become privy to the information that they actually at one point existed? And right now I'm specifically talking about giants. There are literally Instagram pages where they just literally, one I follow in particular, where he just puts on Instagram just articles from the 1800s, 1700s, but mostly the 1800s and 1900s, early 1900s, just talking about giant bones found throughout North America. Some where the jaw was wide enough to bite open a coconut. So there is enough evidence documented out there that discuss giants and some of their burial practices. For example, in West Virginia, the mounds that they have out in West Virginia, a lot of those are actually burial sites for giants. Spoiler alert, but yeah, they are. They're burial sites for giants. They don't say that on them, but the researchers who looked into them and found the giant remains inside the burial mounds can confirm that for you. And one of them He did the studies in the 30s and didn't even publish his findings until the 50s because he was too afraid of losing his career, the ridicule, the backlash. So if you think censorship in the scientific community is something that's new, it's not. It's been around for a very, very long time. So don't be surprised when you do your own research into these things and you find out, oh, wow, there is a lot of information, and why is it being suppressed? I don't know. Go and call up the Smithsonian and ask them and watch them hang up on you. The Y Files, he tried it. Excuse me. He called up the Smithsonian, asked them about giant bones, and they hung up on him. But you go watch my video on the Giants of West Virginia, and you can see a photograph of the individual who ran the Department of suppressing and hiding and collecting remains of giants. And keep in mind that the Smithsonian is part of the federal government. It's a federal organization. It's not a public organization, just so you know. So all those people out there donating to the Smithsonian or subscribing to the Smithsonian magazine, you are donating and subscribing to a federal organization. Federal organization that has probably done horrible things to suppress and destroy the history of North America. That's what the Smithsonian is made for. It was designed to control the narrative of history in North America. That's the whole point. So you look at the history of this world, the history of this continent. You start doing your own research. You start finding out that there were Aborigine blacks already living in North America prior to the arrival of Europeans. You start finding out that there were entire cities already built here, but no one was occupying them. You have to start asking yourself these questions. You start looking into the world fairs and the crazy advanced technology and buildings and architectural designs of the world fair. Just go on Pinterest, and you'll be effing shocked at the craziness you'll find about the world fairs. But no one wants to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the world fairs and how they had robotic taxis, but they're not going to tell you about those kind of things. And escalades, or escalators, I should say, at the world fairs are not going to tell you about those kind of things. Why? Why is it that we really don't even know what was going on in the early 1900s? Because when you start looking into the world fairs, you have to start asking yourself, well, which reality am I living in? Which history am I living in? Am I being told an entire lie? So if history is an entire lie, then the whole life that I have been living in and of itself is it a lie? Is that what that means? So when you start looking into the information and you find out that giants existed, uh, that there was at one point an extinct elongated stalk humanoid species that proliferated the entire earth along with giants, and then you find out that from my own personal research, well, I'm not even going to spoil that. But the point that I'm trying to make is there are so many people out there who are privy and aware of all of this information. So are we living in a different reality because we know that stuff? Does it make it easier for us to see the world unclouded by propaganda and lies and obfuscations and suppression and manipulation? Maybe, I don't know. But that's the point, that's what I'm trying to ask everyone out there when you're reading, when you're listening to this. Ask yourself these questions. So you can go onto my channel, you can look at these stuff, you can read the articles for yourself, you can go and look up this information yourself. I'm not I'm not special. I'm not pulling this out of anywhere secretive. Anybody can look this information up yourself. But the question is, are you going to do it? And then the next question is, how are you going to handle that? Because you already have been domesticated with a particular belief system. You have been conditioned to think and feel and react in a particular way. So when new information comes into your mind, it's like that short story where intelligent people have a buzzer in their brain, and anytime they have a critical thought, it shocks them in the head. And that's what you're currently seeing right now in this climate that we're living in. There are people out there that when you speak to them with critical thinking skills and critical perception and ideas, they start to malfunction and they start calling you a Nazi or a racist or a transphobe or whatever it may be. So you have that nonsense when it comes to politics and ideology and gender ideology. But what about when it comes to humanity? What about when it comes to consciousness? I don't see anyone talking about that. I don't see anyone talking about how the lies of our history shape our reality for us to look at the world and not realize that what we're looking at is a falsification of our truth. But what do I know? I'm just a humble Ronin. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you've made it this far, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.